The Ford F-Series, the truck America, built its life around a cinematic journey through 75 years of American grit, work, and memory. Opening, the truck America grew up with Fade In, a rural landscape somewhere in Middle America. Sunset paints the sky in shades of copper and amber. A weathered barn stands silhouetted against the fading light. Parked beside it, an old Ford truck, maybe a 1959 F-100 or a 1972 F-250, sits in quiet repose. The engine ticks, metal contracting as it cools. A gentle creak of leaf springs settling. The wind moves through the bed, rattling something loose, an old toolbox maybe, or a forgotten chain. Listen to that. That sound right there. That's the sound of American history catching its breath. This truck, whatever year it is, whatever color it's faded to, it's not just sitting here. It's waiting. Waiting like an old friend waits on a porch, knowing you'll come back around eventually. And you will. Because once a truck like this gets into your blood, it never really leaves. For more than 7 decades, the Ford F-Series has been more than metal and rubber and gasoline. It's been a companion, it's been a promise, it's been the vehicle that carried America's dreams down dirt roads and across open country. It's hauled the tools of honest work, it's carried families toward tomorrow, it's sat in 1,000 driveways, in 1,000,000 memories, as constant and reliable as the seasons themselves. This is the story of that truck. This is the story of us. The beginning, bonus built for a new America. Rewind to 1948. The world is changing. America is exhaling. Picture it, 1948. The war is over. American soldiers are coming home with medals and stories and hunger in their eyes. Hunger for normal life, for building something for the future. The Depression is a fading memory. Manufacturing plants that built tanks and trucks for war are hungry for new purpose. There's an energy in the air, almost electric. Possibility crackling like a live wire. Ford was watching. Henry Ford was gone, but his company understood something fundamental about America. We needed to work. We needed to build. We needed vehicles that wouldn't just carry us, but would carry our ambitions too. And so, in 1948, Ford released the bonus-built truck. The name itself was genius. It promised something extra, something worth having, something that represented the bonus of peace, the bonus of victory, the bonus of getting a second chance to build something great. Before the war, trucks were mostly car-based. They were half measures. They had car bodies, car suspensions, car bones. They were good for looking the part, but not for doing the work. Farmers knew this. Construction crews knew this. Men with calluses on their hands and dirt under their fingernails knew this. Ford understood. They designed the F-Series from the ground up as a real truck, purpose-built, built for American farmers who needed reliability more than appearance, built for returning soldiers who wanted to start businesses, buy land, build homes, built for small-town mechanics and construction crews and families with ambitions bigger than what they could fit in a sedan. The first generation, the F1, F2, F3, F4, came out like a promise kept. Here was a truck that replaced the fragile, half-hearted car-truck hybrids with something honest, something real. A truck that said, "I will not let you down," and America believed it. The 1950s, 1960s, work, family, and the rise of the F-100. Now we're in the golden era. The 1950s gleam with chrome and possibility. The F-100 arrived, and it became the soul of the post-war American dream. This wasn't just a truck. This was what hope looked like when you put it on 4 wheels. Those early F-100s had a beauty to them, a genuine, unpretentious beauty. Rounded fenders that caught the light like polished silver. 2-tone paint schemes, maybe a cream and turquoise, or forest green and tan. Chrome that actually meant something because it was real and thick and built to last. A gentle grille with a bold Ford oval right in the middle, like a badge of American pride. Sit in one of those cabins and you felt it. The steel dashboard, the simplicity of the controls, the honesty of the design. No complicated electronics, no plastic nonsense, just a steering wheel, some gauges that actually meant something, a radio that crackled with static and local voices, vinyl bench seats that could fit 3 people across, 3 real conversations, 3 relationships, 3 lives happening at once in that front row. And the engines. Oh, those engines. The Ford Flathead V8, that legendary motor. Honest horsepower, simple engineering that a mechanic with basic tools could work on in a barn by lamplight and have running by morning. Later came the Y-Block V8, that reliable workhorse that became the heartbeat of so many American dreams. There was the 300 cubic inch straight 6, built for farmers and working men who didn't need flash, just reliability. You could run those engines lean, abuse them a little, and they'd still get you home. In the 1960s, Ford pushed further. They introduced the twin I-beam suspension, independent front suspension that gave the truck a smoother ride without compromising its hauling power. It was innovation that actually mattered, that changed how a truck felt when it was working, when it was carrying something precious. And what was it carrying? Everything. Absolutely everything. These trucks carried grandfather and grandson to the fishing hole on a Saturday morning. They hauled lumber for new homes being built in subdivisions all across America. They transported harvests from fields that had been in families for generations. They pulled trailers to county fairs. They were loaded with tools and dreams for small businesses, plumbing companies, electrical contractors, construction crews, farmers expanding their operations. There was something sacred about it, really. The truck wasn't separate from life. It was woven into the fabric of it. A kid's first real look at how the world worked was often from the passenger seat of one of these trucks, sitting beside his father or grandfather, watching how a man drove, how he talked to other men, how he moved through the world with purpose and direction. You learned things in those trucks. You learned about work ethic from the calluses on a father's hands gripping that steering wheel. You learned about reliability, not the abstract concept, but the real thing, the lived thing. Watching an old truck get you somewhere no matter what weather came or what roads you had to take. You learned about generosity by watching a man stop on the road to help someone broken down. The F-100 became more than a vehicle. It became a classroom, a place where life was taught through example. The 1970s, the birth of the F-150 and the soul of a shifting America. The world is changing again. The 1970s arrive with their own complicated energy. The 70s were different. Emissions regulations were coming down like a hammer from federal government. Half-ton trucks faced new restrictions that threatened their very existence. But Ford looked at this challenge and saw opportunity. In 1975, they created the F-150. The F-150 wasn't just a new model designation. It was a reimagining. It was a truck designed to slip through the regulatory cracks while losing nothing essential. It was engineering in service of survival, and it worked perfectly. Those mid to late 1970s F-Series trucks looked different, bolder. The grills became more aggressive, more masculine. Big block engines rumbled under hoods that had become more angular, more functional. The whole aesthetic shifted to something harder, something that reflected a changing America, an America facing gas lines and inflation and uncertainty, but still refusing to give up the dream of independence represented by owning a truck that worked. The F-150 became the answer to a question America was asking. How do I stay myself when the world is changing? How do I keep doing the things I've always done? How do I keep working, keep building, keep being who I am? And that truck, that 1975 and beyond F-150, it had an answer. It had all the engine options you could want. The Windsor V8 with its solid, dependable power, the Cleveland V8 for those who wanted something different, the inline 6 for the practical men who cared more about reliability than bragging rights. But the F-150 represented something else too, the moment when trucks started becoming personal vehicles, not just work vehicles. People weren't just buying them for business anymore. Families were buying them for living, for weekend trips, for camping, for weekend projects. The culture was shifting, and the F-150 was the truck that understood that shift and embraced it. The heavy hitters, F-250, F-350, and American grit. But for men with real work to do, serious, heavy, demanding work, Ford had something else. If the F-100 and F-150 were the backbone of American life, then the F-250 and F-350 were the spine of American industry. These trucks didn't apologize, they didn't smooth their rough edges or try to make themselves prettier than they were. They were built for men who didn't have time for appearances, only for capability. Walk out to a construction site in the 1970s or 1980s and you'd see them everywhere. F-250 highboys jacked up on suspension systems that could handle anything. Beds loaded with 2x4s, 2x10s, steel beams, bumpers reinforced with custom fabrication to handle winches and pull bars. These weren't gentle trucks. These were the trucks that built America. A farmer would trust his F-250 with equipment worth more than the truck itself. He'd load it with hay bales in the summer, use it to pull livestock trailers, haul grain to market. In winter, he'd clear snow from his driveway. In spring, he'd hook it to a combine harvester and work sunrise to sunset. That truck was the bridge between planning and doing, between dreaming and achieving. The engineering in those heavy-duty F-Series trucks was relentless. The frame was overbuilt. The axles were tanks. The transmission could handle abuse that would destroy lesser machines. The suspension systems were designed not for comfort, but for carrying weight, for pulling loads that would make regular trucks weep. And the engines, the big block V8s that would rumble and growl and pull with the steady confidence of something that knows exactly what it's designed to do. These engines could tow a house trailer, could pull a loaded horse trailer through mud, could work all day, every day, and come back for more. There was nobility in those trucks, not the kind of nobility that gets written about in literature, but the real kind. The kind that shows up every morning and does the job that needs doing. The kind that gets dirt under the fingernails and soot on the chrome and never complains. You could see a F-250 pulling a grain trailer down a rural highway at dawn, the engine working steadily, the driver's face focused and weathered, and you'd understand something fundamental about what built this country. It wasn't luck. It wasn't grace. It was work. Relentless, honest, humble work. And the truck was the faithful companion that made it all possible. Behind the wheel, a lifetime of roads. Now close your eyes and imagine. Imagine sitting behind the wheel of a 1959 F-100 on a cold November morning. The engine hasn't been run since yesterday. You turn the key and the starter motor cranks slow and reluctant. It's cold, but the engine turns over. It catches. For a moment there's a rough cough of life, like waking up grumpy from sleep. Then it settles into a rhythm. That 300 straight six, clicking and ticking, waiting to be warm enough to trust. You can smell the gasoline. There's something about older engines burning fuel. It smells honest, raw, ancient. You feel the vibration through the steering wheel, through the seat, through your whole body. This truck is alive, and it's letting you know it. The heater takes forever to warm up. You sit there, hands gripping the wheel, waiting for the windshield to defog, for warm air to pour out of the vents. When it finally comes, it's almost unbearably hot. There's no modulation on old heaters. They're either cold or burning. You crack the window a little, letting in cold air, finding that sweet spot between comfort and misery. Now you're moving. The old 3-speed transmission shifts with a solid thunk. You feel each gear change through your whole body. The steering is heavy. These trucks don't have power steering, or if they do, it's not worth much. You have to work the wheel, really engage with driving this machine. There's a connection there that modern vehicles have mostly lost. When you turn the wheel, you're doing the work yourself. You feel the road. Drive down a country road in the early morning. The world is still quiet. Frost on the fields, the engine settling into its cruising note, the tires singing on asphalt that's not quite fully thawed yet. You pass a farmhouse where somebody's already up, light on in the kitchen. You think about coffee, about breakfast, about what work needs doing today. The vinyl seat is cracked in places. The spring underneath is starting to shift. There's a rattle somewhere in the dash, a speedometer cable maybe, or loose trim. You've learned to ignore it. Or maybe you haven't. Maybe you like it. Maybe that rattle is part of the music of this truck, part of its voice. Now imagine summer, windows down, no air conditioning. Who needs it? The wind through the cab feels like freedom. The sun on your arm, the smell of cut hay and distant rain and dust kicked up by tires. You're driving a 2-lane highway toward the lake where you and your brother are meeting to fish. The radio's playing something. Waylon Jennings maybe, or Merle Haggard. The kind of music that belonged to that era, to that time, to that particular American moment. The truck is working. The engine's warmed up now, running smooth. That flathead V8 or Y block is pulling steadily. You could cruise like this forever. There's a meditation in it, a peace that modern traffic and modern distractions have mostly buried. Now, imagine fall. You're hauling firewood. The truck bed is piled high with split logs, secured with rope and faith. The weight of all that wood pulls the truck down in the rear. That's what these trucks were built for, to carry things, real things, heavy things. You can feel the weight as you drive, feel the truck working. The engine drops down and the gears going uphill, pulling steady and sure. And winter again. Snow on the roads. Maybe the truck has a plow attached. Maybe you're just heading to work through the early morning dark. The heater's working overtime. The defroster struggles. You sit there, hands on the wheel, pointing this truck through conditions that would make newer vehicles nervous. But this truck doesn't worry. It just keeps going. There's a smell in there, oil and gasoline and something indefinably old. Ghosts of every passenger who's ever sat in that cab, every conversation that happened while the wheels were turning, every mile that became memory. The steering column has a little play in it. The brakes are soft. You have to plan ahead when you want to stop, push hard and steady. The clutch, if it's a manual, has taken on a particular personality. You know exactly where the bite point is, exactly how much pressure it needs. These are things you learn. This knowledge becomes part of you. 1,000 drives across those years, to work in all weather, to visit family for holidays, to camping trips with kids who would fall asleep against the window, their breath fogging the glass, to funerals and weddings, to the hospital when Grandpa had his heart attack, to the mechanics when something finally gave up the ghost, and through it all, the truck was there, loyal, steady, asking only for oil changes and gas and basic respect, giving back reliability and capability and a strange, deep companionship. That's what it's like. Behind the wheel of an old Ford F-Series, you're not just driving a truck, you're piloting a piece of history. You're sitting in a machine that connects you to your father, to your grandfather, to the old ways of doing things, to a time when vehicles were simpler, when life moved slower, when the relationship between driver and machine was more intimate and more real. Why the F-Series became America's best-selling truck. In 1977, something remarkable happened. The F-Series became America's best-selling truck, and it never gave up that position. Not once. That's not accident. That's not luck. That's not marketing genius, although Ford had plenty of that. That's because the truck was right. It was right for what people needed. It was right for what America was becoming. By the late 1970s, trucks weren't just for farmers and construction crews anymore. They were becoming lifestyle vehicles. Young guys were buying them because they looked tough. Families were buying them because they could do work and still carry people in relative comfort. Business owners were buying them because they were reliable enough to trust with their livelihood, but affordable enough to actually purchase. The F-Series met all those needs. That's extraordinary. Think about what that means. For nearly 50 years and counting, America keeps choosing the F-Series. Not because it's fashionable, although sometimes it is. Not because it's the cheapest, it often isn't. But because, generation after generation, it works. It does what it promises. It carries what you need carried. It pulls what you need pulled. It gets there, and it gets back. That's the American promise, really. That's the deal we make with machines and with institutions and with each other. Do what you say you'll do. Be reliable. Don't let me down. Work hard. Be honest. Show up every day. The F-Series has kept that promise longer than almost any other vehicle in history. Longer than most marriages. Longer than most business relationships. Longer than most friendships. There's patriotism in that. Not the flag-waving, slogan-shouting kind, but the real patriotism. The patriotism of showing up, of working hard, of being part of something bigger than yourself. The F-Series became a symbol of that. It became almost a physical embodiment of the American work ethic. And America recognized it. America bought it. America kept buying it. Nearly 50 years of dominance in a category is almost unheard of in the automotive world. Generations of memory, fathers, sons, and old trucks. But the real story isn't about sales numbers or market share. The real story is about a boy of maybe 14 sitting beside his father in the cab of an old Ford. It's early morning. They're heading to their uncle's farm to help with something, hay bales or fence repair or some other work that needed doing. The radio's playing low. The light outside is just beginning, that pre-dawn purple that's neither night nor day. The boy is learning something in that moment. He's learning how to be a man by watching another man who's learning how to be a father. The truck is their conference room, their classroom, their church. That boy grows up. He gets older. His father gets older. The truck doesn't. It just keeps being what it's always been, slowly aging, slowly accumulating dents and scratches and stories, but fundamentally unchanged, reliable, present. And then one day, his father passes, and suddenly, that truck becomes something else entirely. It becomes a time machine. It becomes a connection to a man who's gone. The boy, now a man himself, maybe with his own son, runs his hand across the fender and feels his father's presence there. Not in some mystical way, but in the real physical sense of, my dad touched this, my dad drove this, my dad made me into who I am, partly because of time spent in this truck. So he fixes it up. He might restore it, bring it back to showroom condition. Or he might just keep it running, maintain what it is, because that's more honest to its history. Either way, he's keeping a connection alive. He's saying, this matters, my father matters, the time I spent here matters. I'm not going to let this go. And maybe if he's lucky, he takes his own son for a ride in that same truck. The third generation. The boy sits where his father sat, where his grandfather sat, and he feels it too. That sense of connection, that continuity, that this is more than transportation. This is inheritance. That's been happening in driveways and barns across America for 7 decades. People don't just sell their old F-Series trucks. They pass them down, like heirlooms, like stories, like pieces of their lives wrapped up in sheet metal and engine oil. There's a restomod culture now, people taking classic F-Series trucks, keeping the beautiful exterior but updating the internals, adding modern engines, modern brakes, modern comfort. It's a beautiful philosophy, really. It says, I want to keep what's important, the soul of this truck, the way it looks, the memory it carries. But I also want it to be reliable and safe and comfortable in 2024. I want to honor the past while living in the present. That's not disrespect to the original. That's love. That's saying, this matters enough to me that I'm going to spend time and money making sure it survives, that it can be used, that it can be driven and enjoyed and passed on. Grandmothers have old F-100s sitting in their garages that their husbands bought in 1965 and drove for 50 years. Uncles have restored old F-250s that they bring to car shows to talk about the time they learned to drive in that exact truck. Young couples are hunting down specific model year F-150s because that's what their grandfather drove, and they want to feel that connection. The truck became more than a vehicle. It became a keeper of family stories, a repository of memory, a physical embodiment of where we came from and how we got here. The decades that shaped it and us. Let's look at how the truck changed and what those changes meant. The 1950s F-100 was beautiful because it represented optimism. America had won a war. We'd proven ourselves. Now we were going to build, create, grow. Those rounded fenders and bright two-tone colors reflected a nation looking forward with confidence. The 1960s brought twin I-beam suspension and improved interiors because America was asking for more comfort without sacrificing capability. We were becoming more sophisticated, but we didn't want to lose our working-class roots. We wanted to haul lumber and also take the family to the lake. The truck adapted. The 1970s brought big block engines and bolder styling because something shifted in America. We were facing challenges, gas lines, inflation, uncertainty. That truck, with its aggressive grille and powerful engines, said, "I'm still strong, I'm still capable, the world can change, I'm not going anywhere." The 1980s brought fuel injection and aerodynamic redesigns because we'd learned that efficiency mattered. We'd learned that the future wasn't going to be the same as the past. But Ford understood something crucial. You don't have to lose your identity to adapt. You can become more efficient, more modern, and still be recognizably yourself. The 1990s brought larger cabs and smoother rides because families were spending more time in their trucks. These weren't just work vehicles anymore. They were places where life happened. They deserved to be comfortable. They deserved to be places where a family could drive 12 hours to a vacation without everybody being in pain by the time you arrived. Each decade, the F-Series evolved. Each decade, it became slightly more sophisticated, slightly more comfortable, slightly more capable. But it never lost the core of what it was. It never became embarrassed about its working-class roots. It never tried to be something other than a truck. Engines that meant something. Let's talk about the hearts that beat in these machines. The flathead V8, the engine that started it all. Simple, elegant, relatively low horsepower by modern standards, but it didn't need to be powerful in the way we think about power now. It needed to be reliable. It needed to be something a man could fix if it broke down out in the country. It was an engine that made sense to people who understood mechanics. Then came the Y block, the engine that so many people trust that it's almost legendary. A V8 that became the standard of the industry for reliability and steady, honest power. Not flashy, not trying to prove anything, just doing its job, year after year, mile after mile. The 300 cubic inch inline six, the engine for men who didn't need flash, for farmers who cared more about getting it done than about having the biggest engine on the block. An engine that would run lean, run dirty, run hard, and still get you home. There was a beauty in its simplicity. The Windsor V8, the Cleveland V8. Engines that carried the tradition forward, engines that kept the promise alive. And later, the Triton V8s, modern engines built into classic trucks through restorations and customizations, engines that brought the reliability and efficiency of today while honoring the aesthetic and spirit of yesterday. Every engine that ever turned over in an F-Series truck was part of a conversation between man and machine, between what we needed and what engineers could provide, between the past and the present. Closing. The road that never ends. Fade back, sunset. The old F-Series is still there by the barn. The truck isn't special because it's perfect. It's special because it's not. It's got rust. It's got dents. The interior is worn. The vinyl is cracked. The chrome has tarnished. Time has written its story all over this machine in ways that can't be undone and shouldn't be forgotten. That's what makes it beautiful. This truck represents something that doesn't exist much anymore. A commitment to durability over disposability. A belief that something is worth keeping, worth maintaining, worth using until it literally can't be used anymore. And then, even then, worth saving, worth restoring, worth passing on. America built itself in and around vehicles like this. The F-Series isn't just a truck, it's a time capsule. It's a physical connection to who we were, to what mattered to us, to the hands that held its steering wheel and the dreams that rode in its bed. For nearly 80 years, the Ford F-Series has been there, through economic boom and recession, through wars and peace, through technological revolution and social upheaval. Through all of it, that truck has kept its fundamental promise: to work, to be reliable, to get you there and back again. You see an old F-Series on the road now, and you're looking at history. You're looking at a time when things were simpler, maybe, but not necessarily better. Just different. Different in ways that some of us miss, different in ways that we didn't fully appreciate while we were living through them. There's a guy driving that truck. He might be 70, might be 30, might be any age. But if it's an old one, if it's a classic, there's almost always a story there, a connection, a memory, a lineage. He knew somebody who drove this model. Or he's keeping it the way his father kept it. Or he's introducing his own kids to what mechanical simplicity feels like. or he's just holding on to a piece of a time that meant something to him. That's the magic of the F-Series. It outlived its original purpose. It became something more than a vehicle. It became a symbol, a keeper of memory, a living connection to generations past. The sun sinks lower. The old truck sits there, cooling, creaking, settling in for another night. Chrome catching the last light like embers from a fire that's been burning for 79 years and shows no signs of going out. Tomorrow morning, somebody will turn that key. That engine will turn over. The wheels will turn. The road will pull underneath those old tires. And somewhere in America, the story continues. Because the Ford F-Series didn't just carry Americans down roads. It carried America itself. It carried our work and our dreams and our hands-on faith that if you showed up every day and did the work that needed doing, you could build something that lasted. That truck won't last forever. Nothing does. But the memory of it will. The story of it will. The feeling of what it meant to climb into that cab and know that whatever you needed done, this machine would help you do it. That will last. That's the real legacy of the Ford F-Series. Not sales records or market dominance, though those matter, but the way it wove itself into the fabric of American life. The way it became not just a vehicle, but a companion, a teacher, a keeper of family stories and working-class dreams. So the next time you see an old F-Series, dusty and dented maybe, or lovingly restored maybe, take a moment. Remember what it meant. Remember what it carried. Remember the hands that gripped its wheel, the voices that filled its cab, the distances it covered, the loads it hauled, the lives it touched. Because that truck, any of them, really, but especially the old ones, that truck is America, not the America of skyscrapers and stock tickers and quarterly earnings, but the America of honest work and loyal machines, and the understanding that some things are worth keeping, worth maintaining, worth honoring long after they've done the job they were designed to do. The sun sinks. The stars come out. An old F-Series sits in the American darkness, waiting for tomorrow, waiting for the next journey, carrying within it the weight and warmth and wonder of 79 years of American life. And that truck, that beautiful, battered, beloved truck, will be ready. Because that's what it does. It's always been ready, and it always will be. End.